Deaf parents with Jesus, heart language. How do you combine those two? I wasn't sure how to word it until you mentioned it. Yes, heart language. That's what we're talking about. Heart language. Hello, my name is Erin, and I'm here with Vanessa and Randy, and we're going to have a discussion about his heart language book. I'd like Randy to introduce himself. Tell us a little bit about you, Randy.
First of all, thank you so much for allowing me to be on with you both. I have already checked you both out online and your ministry and what you do. Thank God for your testimony and your impact on many Christians out there, and I thank you for that. I was blessed to be born into a home with deaf parents, deaf grandparents, deaf great-grandparents, deaf aunts and uncles, and now I have a deaf niece, so 5 generations of deafness in my family. I even had a deaf dog while I was a kid, and the deaf dog knew some sign. It was funny. Anyway, so I was blessed to be born with that strong deaf family, 5 generations. I was a public school kid all my life, but because my parents both graduated from Gallaudet, they both are educators. My dad and mom both taught and worked at different deaf schools all my life. They taught at California School for Deaf, Florida, Oklahoma, Kentucky, and just to name a few, but we lived in 9 different states, so I had a great experience of traveling over the country, meeting different deaf people from different parts of the United States of America. Of course, mom and dad, both teachers in the school, made me involved with the deaf a lot, going to the football games, basketball games. I grew up with many deaf best friends, so just so thankful for that experience. And now I'm a pastor of a church, I have a deaf ministry in the church, and that's where we're at now.
Thank you for sharing. It's really awesome that you have a deaf dog, too.
Yes, we did. 4 years.
What kind of dog is it?
It was a Boston Terrier. We had him for 9 years while I was from about 7 to 16 years old. Deaf dog for part
That's
of my
cool.
life. Yeah. Good dog.
Yeah. So now I just want to dive into the questions and let's get into the details of the book. So you had mentioned heart language. So where did that idea germinate? Why did you write this book?
That's a great question. I'm always thankful that I grew up bilingual and bicultural, and I've had the privilege since I became a Christian at 18 and traveled the world too. You know, I've been to 9 different countries to deaf. I preached to the deaf in the Philippines, Bahamas, Jamaica, Canada, Ecuador, different countries. I started to learn that I think the problem with us Christians in America is we think God is an American. He's not an American. And I'm learning that the world has different cultures, but and methods will be different, but the message is the same. The message is the same, that Jesus Christ for all. So I started to preach a message, sermon while I was traveling on the subject of heart language, because that verse, John 7:46, that's the theme verse of my book, where some Pharisees sent leaders to arrest Jesus Christ. So they come, they stand, and they're ready to arrest Jesus. When they heard Jesus speak, they used that phrase, "Never man spake like this man." When I read that, I thought, Jesus was using the same language of that day, same language, but his spirit or his attitude was different. Then it hit me. Jesus didn't speak from only his mind. He spoke from his heart. That's why Jesus could minister to Rome, Jew, Gentile, Samaritan all at the same time, because Jesus spoke from the heart. You can't hear language from the heart unless you listen from the heart. So listen. So spoke, listen, and that started the theme of heart language.
Now, you wrote about your experiences growing up as a child with deaf parents. So what do you hope your readers will be able to connect with your life experiences with deaf parents and Jesus and his heart language? So how do you want them to combine the two to help them understand it in a deeper level?
Absolutely. I know there is power in personal testimony, personal story. Like before we started this Zoom, both shared your story, and it always hits. Everyone has a personal story, and that's the thing I love about Jesus. He always had the ability to meet people one on one. He reached all, but he was so skilled at one on one. John is amazing. John chapter 3, one on one. John chapter 4, one on one. John chapter 8, one on one. Constantly helping people one on one. So I grew up with a different experience than most people. I have a special heart for codas. I love codas, and I know many codas grow up very disappointed or struggle with bitterness. And I always try to encourage them, hey, most of this world is born. They're born with hearing parents like everybody else. We have the privilege of having deaf family. Wow. And I think when people change their perspective on that, it's all about education. In the book, I mentioned the word ignorance, and ignorance sometimes is a negative, but really it's not. It just means not knowing. I'm not skilled at mechanics of cars. I just don't know how to do it. Many people don't know or understand or even try to become aware of the deaf culture. So I was just thrilled to maybe take that story, use that as a draw, and then in the back door, also give the concept of Jesus Christ, how he mastered reaching people, different people, wealthy, poor, people who had reputation and didn't. He was mastered that because he loved people, and personal stories give power. Then you go around and you show Jesus Christ had that interest in every individual, including all people.
Yeah, and you're talking about Jesus's heart language is easy to show, and people don't understand why they work so hard to share his love with you, with others. And through my experience with cancer, I still endured and I showed the love. I want people to see my heart. And the 12 H's in your book, there's different H's. It's amazing to see. I didn't even realize it towards the end of the book. And it's really, you intended to do that, right? Because it just was a surprise to me. And I thought, wow, they all start with the letter H. And anyway, all of these apply to what I'm doing. Well, maybe not all of them, but it's an encouragement for others to have hope and that you can live for Christ through difficult times. And people are just drawn to action when you speak from the heart. And when I read your book, I got an epiphany, and I couldn't put it in words until I saw your book. Yes, this is heart language, and that's what makes people look and take note. And I think that's what we need to do. Speak like Jesus, think like Jesus, but also have a heart like Jesus and pour it out to others. And that will be attractive, and others may want to follow. Yeah.
The old saying is people are afraid of what they don't know. And, so many times people are, well, I don't know. So, no, you don't have to be afraid. We need more unity. We have to come together. God is not a divider. He wants us to, unfortunately, we have to divide. I understand. We need to encourage unity, not discourage that. And that's why it's so important. The reason I picked 12 different H's, it's funny, all the chapters originally had H. Agent said, you better change the titles and make people search for the H. Oh, good idea. But the reason I had different H's is sometimes we need healing. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we need hope. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we need help. Sometimes we don't. So they all can apply to us at different stages of our life. That's why I did that.
That's funny. I noticed that H theme as well. And the one thing that I love about your book was honesty, because I always want to be honest with my family, with my children. But oftentimes, I just had a chat with one of my friends this morning about honesty, ironically. And I noticed that people typically associate honesty with bad things. Like, it's an evil thing to be honest. So I'd like for you to elaborate on what your father was like, and how was he honest and was able to express that trait?
Well, we have forgotten that one of the basic original 10 Commandments is not lying. Thou shalt not bear. And we are seeing a society now that is just so used to lying that we become hard to it. We lie about our work. We lie. Politicians lie all the time. Even pastors. And one thing I grew up, my dad, I didn't really grow up in a Christian home. My mom and dad were moral people. We didn't find Christ until later in my life. We had a good family, very close brother and sister, very close family, no doubt. But one thing my dad always taught me is liars, liars will always struggle in life because you have to keep covering. He says, just tell the truth. I heard a quote a long time ago. It says, truth apologizes to no man. A beautiful quote. When you tell the truth and you live the truth, it's Paul, you don't have to apologize all the time. Just tell the truth. Truth always wins, and that's what made Jesus so special. Heart language is telling the truth. I have 4 children, 21, 18, 15, 12, and I've watched all 4 grow up, and sometimes I had to be completely honest with them. For example, electricity, you will die or run in the street, the car and get run over when you're 2, 3 years. Being honest, you can get hurt, but we tell you the honesty because we love and care for you. So the balance of love and loving people enough to tell them the truth is so important, and it's lacking in America today.
And it's important to be honest by not yelling, but actually having a sit down and in a rational way explain things and explain why things are happening. For example, my son was upset about what his friend was telling him, and I said, you know what, sometimes people don't understand how to express themselves, and so you need to be the one to approach him and tell him how you feel and that you didn't like it. And he thought, oh man, it takes some bravery and honesty and communication. I mean, those two go together, right? Yeah. And it's like you don't want to play with fire. And that concept of, we know the truth in the Bible. It says in Galatians 5, verse 24, or in that area. And these disciples that they send, and if you're playing with fire, it can lead to your death. And so to be honest is a virtue, and it sets you free from any of the bondage of the world. That's Satan's work, and that's their goal of Satan, is that they don't want us to go home with Jesus. Yes. Just let them go. Now, talking about your mom, I admire her life working with children, being a teacher or something, right? What was her exact role at work? Was she a teacher?
Yes. My mom got her bachelor's degree. I got it a long time ago. My dad has 2 master's degrees, so my dad obviously was able to excel in education. He sometimes was a dean. That's why the book talks about how they offered him a superintendent position. But my mom always had a special burden for children. She gets so very, when she sees deaf children struggling with reading, my mom always preaches, read. So I observe my mom all the time, focusing on children. And I think the reason she connected so well with children is, and I'm honest, I grew up in her house 18 years, and I still observe my mom today. She comes to my church. My mom's never had a bad day. I'm telling the truth. She always finds positive in everything. My mom she always says life is too short to dwell on negative and the past. Keep moving on. And I learned that from my mom. So because of that, children connected to her, And when we became Christians, my mom was really inspired by Jesus, because the Bible talks about how children came to Jesus, and it's absolutely shoot. No. Bring the children. Really, children. Jesus made children a priority in his life, his ministry. And my mom always focused. My mom's philosophy is, if we invest in children, we will improve their potential as teenagers and adults. It's easier to build children than fix broken teenagers and adults. Her philosophy is always start with the children, teach them to love education, love reading, love learning, and love God. And I had a front row seat to watching an amazing woman, and I got to call her mom.
Can she appear and talk about any tips she has, any advice?
Oh, yeah. I tell people all the time, they're missing a gem.
Yeah.
She could be on this sometime. You will enjoy her. She teaches deaf women regularly. My 4 children love their grandma. So she would be happy to come on with you all sometime. I can tell if you want. I will give you
Yeah. And we could do a video or something and upload that. Yeah.
Well, she just finished my book. She's a slow reader.
Yeah.
My dad read it 3 times, but my she will be interviewed about my book soon on Facebook. And I think we're all friends on Facebook now, so stay tuned.
Yeah. So I work for the school system. I've been there for 16 years, and I can imagine what she's doing. And I have a heart for children too, and not only in the deaf school, but also for mainstream kids too. And I know that sometimes it's hard for them to identify with deaf culture or ASL. So I've already experienced what it's like to be in both worlds. So I know how to be able to relate to them using the knowledge that I've gained. And I know that there's a lot of lacking of their identification of their skills or their talents that they didn't realize they had. And so I encourage them to discover that. And when I'm with them most of the day, they need attention. They need our undivided attention to give them that inspiration and motivation to come back to school the next day with anticipation, because at home they don't have that language to be able to get the inspiration from their parents as far as that. So I feel like that's a huge duty for me, is to encourage positive interactions so they can see that after they've graduated high school and they connect with friends, it makes sense because I live for Jesus. Yes, that's definitely the healing language.
Yes. And many deaf children don't have confidence, they struggle with confidence because they feel, I do, but my mom and people like you both are good role models. They look and say, if they can do it, then I can do it too, I'm still hearing. I'm a coder, but I'm still hearing. But when a deaf person says, look at me, you can, inspires me,
Yeah, and it's sad to see deaf people struggle with their identities, because I did struggle with that before. But I have to remember, it's not necessarily about me being deaf. He made me deaf for a reason. I'm not deaf first. I'm Jesus. I'm a child of God first. That's the first thing about me. Deafness is just a part of me, and some people can't walk, some people can't see, and I mean, that's fine. He can still use you. It's amazing.
Right. And that's one of the reasons I wrote that book, because if we only base relationships on hearing up, everything is learned behavior. Psychologists say that babies are only born with 2 natural fears: fear of falling and fear of loud noises. So deaf babies already have an advantage. They don't have a fear of noise, only fear of falling. Everything after that is taught and learned behavior. So we are seeing a society that lives based on that learned behavior, and everything's based here on stereotypes, prejudices, all those. But if we start to expand our life, not just hear up, but include the heart here, put that in the picture, then we can make a difference, because now we're starting to be open to learning. Oh, your culture's different than mine. Come on, tell me, teach me. Oh, deaf culture. Oh, hard of hearing culture. Black culture. Oh, you're from the Philippines or Bahamas. Open and realize, wow, Jesus mastered that. Jesus said people felt love. In John chapter 4, Jesus goes to the well, she's half Jew, half Gentile. And she's shocked. Why are you talking to me? I love you. And changes that city, That's why we have to include, not just here. We will have problems. Include the heart. Makes a huge difference.
Very true. Talking about your mom being so positive and upbeat with happiness, and that makes me think of where I work, and that it took me about 2 years before this person recognized that I was married and I had kids. And I said, yeah. And it was because my husband worked at the same place we did. And they said, I didn't know you were married. I didn't know you had kids. You look too happy. You don't look like you have any stress. And I said, well, you don't see that. But that encouraged me to keep going on what I'm doing and not to stop. That I needed that happiness and that little encouragement. And so your mom does the same with others. Yeah, when I was a teenager, I worked on a boat as a waitress, and there was a band there, and I always walked by the band to the kitchen to bring dishes and food, and they said, you're always smiling at me. Why are you smiling? And I thought, I don't know. Why don't I smile? I love to smile. I love to feel the music of the band. It's enjoyable. I mean, I can't hear people talking, but I can still do my job happily, even though I'm not talking about Jesus,
Right.
Back then I wasn't really in God's word yet, and so it's only been about 2 years, but
And heart language is just communication, but also smile. I never forget, I flew to the Philippines. I'm going to Manila, huge airport, everywhere. I'm alone walking. I go to passport. See the person standing out, look at him. I thought, I'm going to smile. As soon as I smile, they smile. Everyone understands smile. Baby, smile, baby, coffee, smile. Even that older person in a nursing home who has Alzheimer's starting to lose them. Smiles. Smile is a powerful tool, and it is a part of heart language.
Yeah, it's contagious.
Yes, contagious. Good contagious, yes.
And I love how you talked about joy, because it's very important. Happiness is temporary, but joy is forever. So I love that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
True. Jesus never promised us happiness.
Right.
That Bible doesn't, but he promises joy. And there's a big difference between the two. Jesus is for happiness, but joy is his promise. Thank God for joy.
And also, Jesus never had to bring anything. He didn't even have a home. He didn't have a book. He didn't have things. He walked and he traveled with his 12 disciples, and he still had joy. So we don't need this stuff to be able to go to heaven, right? Am I right? Yeah, it's amazing. So we just need to remind ourselves that our heart goes to heaven. The rest stays on earth. Right? Yeah.
Beautiful.
Talking about being hopeful, there was a time when I found out I had cancer and I didn't know what to do, and I searched to connect with people, especially deaf people, and there wasn't access to information about cancer. And what I did is I looked at hearing people on YouTube, and I thought they have access, but what about deaf people? So, I wasn't comfortable sharing my journey, but God is telling me to show and give deaf people hope in him and trust in him, and show that you're right. It's better to talk with people one-on-one, build a personal connection, and that gives them the hope. And that's what you would explain, that it's amazing. And everything you've mentioned in this book, I just want to have a huge smile and look at God and say thank you, because everything makes sense. All the H's, my goodness.
People allow their past to prevent them from future hope. And I often tell people that when we drive our cars, we spend 98% of the time going forward, with 2% in reverse. We don't use our reverse much. We're always in drive. And God wants us to be excited about our future, while the devil wants us to live in our past. And I encourage people, all of us have things in our past, bad stuff, hurts, mistakes, and cancer, problems. You find it out, death later in life, all those things now. But our future is bright. Why? If we will use what we learned from the past to help us in the future, and make a big difference. So that's why I love the word hope. It's a beautiful story.
And I love when you say that we only go in reverse 2% of the time. That's very true. And There was a day I was driving home from a photo shoot, so I'm a photographer, and I went over to look at my rearview mirror, and I saw the sun setting, and I thought, wow, we need to focus on Jesus looking forward, but we can always reflect about what you've done.
Right.
And learn from those mistakes and move forward with Jesus, not move backward per se.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Great. Right. The mirror's small, the window's big. The front's big, small. I'm just trying to look back a little bit.
Right.
Wreck, mostly looking here, it's a beautiful point.
Right. And if we are obsessing about the past, that means we're missing what God has planned for us, His blessings, the opportunities that He's going to give us in abundance ahead. And that did happen to me. And I asked for forgiveness, and He did pour out blessings. And I was able to endure being one with Him. And we all do have those moments, right? Yeah. So your book really is about, it's really for hearing people only, or can it apply to all of us?
Yeah. Well, so I'm asked that a lot, even to my friends' contacts. I didn't know it was for him. I thought it was only for the deaf. I said, hold on. My question is simply this. Do we have a heart? Anyone who has a heart, that book is for, because that's the point. So some people think it's only for the deaf, only for the hearing. That's why I wrote, and it was a God thing. Right. Every chapter, a personal story about the deaf, so that we can educate the hearing world and to give the deaf some spotlight into the world, but also give spiritual application to it. So I ask people, if you have a heart that applies to all of us, leaders, dads, moms, husbands, wives, children, really the book's for everybody, because it is about the heart. And I think 2021, we see the way people communicate on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So many times people are so negative and hateful because they speak only from the mind. They don't care what they say if it hurts people. But if you include the heart again, you will stop. Say, time out. What I'm about to say or post, will it help or hurt people? Stop. Ask that question. Heart language is for all, deaf, hearing, everybody. That's the purpose of the book.
I love that. And that relates to another question I have, which is, how do we say it? So in the book you said, when we focus on our hows, the who's will listen better to the whats. So can you explain that?
Sure. As a father, I observed my 4 children growing up. And oftentimes I demanded things from my children that I realized I had not invested time to teach them first. For example, clean your room. My kid says, okay. Then they go, they don't know how to do it. So how is so important. I teach them, I invest the time, and then I communicate clearly. Now, if they disobey after they know, then there are consequences. That's why God gave us a Bible. God gives us a book, instructions on how to live as a husband, wife, father. If I follow the Bible, amazing things work out better. It is a true book. It is a principled book. When I choose to ignore it, then I find myself in problems again. So how we portray it makes people attract to the truth. That's what Jesus was amazing about. Jesus always wanted people to get his truth. But Jesus knew that if I get the how right, they will be open to receiving the what. So the more we realize how we communicate, present the truth, the easier will be received by the hearers.
And I wanted to ask you about Jesus being the world changer himself. So, meaning we need to be one too. Really be a world changer. Give people hope.
I call it the me vote. I've made videos like before. So I know we just finished a political election in America, very passionate, very emotional. I'm very involved politically, and I support my right as an American, my family's free, my support. But I also understand that there are many things in life that I can't control. And I think many people, especially Christians sometimes, we allow what we can't control to rob us from what we can control. So I can't always control who's in the White House or who's the governor or who is the leader or mayor of my city, but I can decide how I will live today. I can decide how I can reflect Christ no matter what's happening. I can be the best husband and father I strive to be. And I fail all the time. I can try. I can vote. So I often say that God votes for me to live for him and have a good day. The devil votes for me not to. I am the tiebreaker. I can vote with the God or the devil. And Christians maybe struggle with that, We have a bad day. We have struggle. Things happen that don't work out the way I wanted it. I can't let that control me. I have to say, okay, Holy Spirit, lead me to do what's right. I can be the best husband based on what I've learned and the tools and God's help in the Bible. So that is another reason I wrote the book Heart Language, to remind us that we can control our communication methods and make a difference in the world. Worlds change one by one. The famous story of the starfish, after the storm. Many starfish are on the shore, and the little boy was walking, throwing them in the water, throwing them. The man says, hey, you can't save all of them. The boy looks at him. I saved that one. One by one. We can, if we just try one at a time.
Exactly. I was talking with many people that are confused about what's happening right now, and they don't understand. And it's fine not to understand. Just follow what God is telling you and read the scriptures, read the Bible. It'll tell you the truth. Everything begins in our hearts, right here. And then it builds on that. So then everything becomes better if we just change ourselves little by little.
Beautiful, I agree.
It's like you're looking in a mirror and you're thinking, wow, God changed me. I'm thankful for that person who was bold enough to share the gospel with me.
Yes.
And I look at the mirror and I say, wow, that person made a difference in me. And the best place to start ministry is at home. Make big changes in your home with your children, with your spouse, teaching his ways. And your little group can make all the difference, because then you'll be able to go out and change others in the world. And really, Jesus is the only one that can change them, not us. But we can definitely be the world changers. Yeah.
We throw a rock in the pond, hits the water. First one, that's my family. But then the water goes, and that's important. We hit it here. It takes time, but it's worth it.
Oh, I have one funny question. So your dad actually read the whole dictionary?
Yes. People ask me all the time, yes. My dad went to the Florida School for the Deaf, and FSDB. I was born in Sansa. My dad went there in 39. She started going in 1944 at World War II. And my dad graduated in 1957, 58, somewhere around there. My dad graduated with a second and third grade reading level, because at that time, it didn't allow you to do sign language. My dad would try to sign in class and smack. My dad had deaf parents, fluent in sign language, but not allowed. Graduated high school with very minimal education, reading. So my dad became a printer. 7 years, different card. You could go and work as a printer. My dad knew he needed more. I'm not satisfied, so he bought a dictionary and read the dictionary. Then he applied for Guided, and thank God, because he's 9 years older than my mom. If he went straight to Guided, they would never met my mom, but he went 9 years older. Later, my dad went to Guided at 25, 7 years after he graduated, and then got his bachelor's degree. But yeah, he read the dictionary. And one thing I love about my dad is he's a beautiful example of not being upset at his situation. I'm deaf. I can't have a good job. I want to depend on the government. No, my dad, he got up, read the dictionary, worked hard, got 2 master's degrees, and he lived the American dream, had a house, wife, and kids, He shows that you can be an overcomer. So I'm proud of my dad.
Anything can happen because
Right.
if you sit back, you won't get anywhere.
Exactly.
So we have to actually roll up our sleeves and serve Jesus every day and do our best.
Anyone can, right? That's why I love Jesus again emphasizing. Jesus called, who did he call to be disciples? You expect him to call the wealthy or educated or religious. He called fishermen, tax collectors. Jesus loves to see potential. What can be, will be, if we want it hard enough, Beautiful. Jesus gave us that example.
So I know you want us to help spread awareness about your book, and I encourage everyone watching to support Randy and buy his book, Heart Language. Spread the word. Please share this. And I'd like to know if you have any final words or thoughts you'd like to share with us.
Sure. First, I want to thank you both for the honor of being on this Zoom, and I hope it's a blessing to all. And I want all of you who watch this to know that I respond personally to every message I get on Facebook. I have a personal Facebook page up to 5,000, but I also have a ministry page, Heart Language. You can find Instagram and Twitter, and if you message me, I will always respond. And yes, it's a tough balance because I don't want people to think that I want the book out for them. They know the message, the message I really, really want. I really believe marriages can be saved, parent-children relationships can be helped, and society can be improved if we would learn to communicate from the heart more than just the mind, And so my goal is to help people, and also I'd like to let people know that $1 from every book goes to my mom and dad to honor them, and $1 of sales from every book goes to missions program. Mission works around, so it's not just about me. I really want that book to reach the masses, especially the deaf, hearing everybody. So I really have a burden for that, and so I thank you both so much, and I'm honored to be on this program. And anything I can do for you in the future, let me know. I feel like I have new friends. Thank God for that. We're new friends serving the Lord together.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time spending with us today, Aaron. Yes, thank you for getting in touch with me and sitting down to talk with us about this book, and we'll definitely stay in touch. And
please do.
Can't wait to see that next book. Please. When will that be?
Well, we're working on 2 at the same time. My wife and I will have a workbook study for Bible studies. I'm working on my second book called It Is Not That Hard to See. Sounds like hard, but heart. And it's a book that talks about how we focus on problems too much. We focus on solutions. Jesus was so good. He showed up, saw a problem, fixed it. And we need to be fixers, fixing problems, helping people. So that will be part 2. It will be almost similar with deaf stories, and of course, talking about our wonderful Savior, Jesus Christ.
Yes, we're looking forward to that. Yeah.
Thank you. It was such a blessing to me. Thank you.